Welcome back, nerds. This is Annalise.
This is Rob.
And we are your nerd best friends.
Goddamn Donut.
Hey, nerds, do us a favor. Favor with a lightsaber. Hey, nerds, do us a favor.
Powered by kyber crystals.
Apparently. Spoiler alert to the last episode. Do us a favor. Follow, subscribe, and share this episode with a fellow nerd and help us grow the nerd herd. Time to strap in, roll up for initiative, and let's get nerdy. This is episode 99. 99.
Like Wayne Gretzky, the great one.
Like balloons. That's what I think of. The song 99. Yep, exactly. Red balloons because of it. But it's episode 99, and we're about to reach the third level of the dungeon and choose our race and class. And there's a cat with us. How you doing, Rob?
We are talking Dungeon Crawler Carl today.
Yes, we are.
Clearly, if you didn't get those references, Dungeon Crawler Carl, which is incredibly hard to say. I think it's just DCC from here on out.
DCC, you got it.
Is a very, very popular novel series. In fact, I know that it either has already launched or is launching very soon. There is a DCC role-playing game. There's DCC video games. I guess it's a mobile game, but there's all kinds of stuff coming out for this book. It is very popular. Very
popular right now, and we jumped on the train of reading the first of this series of books. But before we get to that, we have some nerd mail. This week's nerd mail comes from Dr. Intern Joan herself, who did some research, and
the calls are coming from inside the house.
From inside the house, but this is an important one. She sent us a message about Geek Week PDX. So this is we might have to do some nerd travel in September. It is the world's only citywide Comic-Con. So what they do is have all the nerd things happening during that week, and they promote all of it as Geek Week. So think about your burrito week or your burger week, except it's Geek Week. So they're talking about over 100 small businesses all over Portland will participate in Geek Week.
It's in Portland. Okay.
September 11th through the 20th. There's a kickoff party, fantasy fest, a pop-up art trail across Portland called Sneaky Sasquatch, a Dungeons and Dragons tournament. I don't know how you make it a tournament, but that's amazing. A Dungeons and Dragons camp for kids to learn how to play. I don't know if they actually mean camping or it's just like a day camp that kids can go learn how to play Dungeons and Dragons. And it says just keep watching because they're going to keep promoting stuff. They've got hotel deals in Portland for the week. Like,
very nice.
We off podcast we need to talk about some nerd travels for Geek Week Portland.
That is pretty fun. It's that time of year, that August, September time of year is everything, right? It's all of the conventions and all of the conferences and all of the things. But that sounds like a good one because if it's citywide like that, you're really choosing your own adventure, right? Because it's not like, oh, well, I just got to show up to this convention center with 1 million people and see what's there. It's like, no, like it's the whole city. That sounds really cool. I can't wait to learn more about it. And I'm not surprised. What a perfect city to do that in. Like, clearly, when I travel, it's always geek travels. It's always nerd travels because that's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for. I want to go to the bookstores and the game stores and all that kind of stuff. But no matter where I went in Portland, even when we went to like the outdoor markets and things like that, there were tons of places where it was like, hey, this is the place where the guy makes foam swords for LARPing. Hey, this is the place where somebody makes jewelry out of D20s and dice. Oh, here's the place where the leatherwork guy is making, cool fantasy stuff. And so it doesn't surprise me. There was everywhere you turn, there's a cool nerd hobby in Portland. It's a really fun city.
I mean, it sounds super cool. It's such a good idea. It's so much more appeasing sounding to me to think that you're not stuck in this one convention center with everybody all at once trying to get to the same things. Yeah. That sounds cool.
Competing for food and competing for hotel rooms and stuff. You can just be like, the city is your oyster.
It's amazing. It's such a unique idea. We're gonna have to look into it some more. And thank you to Dr. Intern Joan.
Very cool. All right.
Yes. So send in your deep thoughts, nerd questions, or talk nerdy to me subjects you'd like us to cover by sliding into our DMs or send us those topics in an email to podcast@nerdbestfriends.com. Alrighty. Dungeon Crawler Carl, DCC. So I want to start, Rob, with just a quick little synopsis. Okay? So it's a man, his ex-girlfriend's cat, and a sadistic game show unlike anything in the universe. A dungeon crawl where survival depends on killing your prey. Dungeon Crawler Carl is a fictional, it says lit RPG. It's lit. I think I've never seen that phrase before. So literary RPG.
Yeah, literary.
It's an adventure novel by Matt Dinniman and the first installment of the Dungeon Crawler Carl book series. It really is hard to say.
It really is hard to say. And it's funny because like you didn't even stumble over the crawler part, which I think is a hard word to say no matter what.
No, I tried to mix crawler and dungeon in the same word. Dunger. Yes, so we read DCC by Matt Dinniman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's just start with general thoughts. What are your general thoughts about this?
So general thoughts about this book is, as I was listening, I listened to it. I didn't read it. I listened to the book. It was the Audible version where there's like different voice actors and stuff. And it was really good. Very well produced and very well good. Very well done. But as I was listening to it, I was having the thought, I'm like, oh, I think this is an example of just because something is popular doesn't mean it's good. I did not enjoy this novel. Hot take. I know it's super popular, but I did not enjoy this novel, and I do not believe I will be reading any more in this series.
I also did the audiobook, which I think Dr. Intern Joan will argue that we both read it. This is still a reading format. I also listened to the Audible version. It took a while for me to get into it. I will say that. Like the multiple voices and use of the voices and the main gentleman who reads it, it took me a minute to like really lean into it. But once the storyline really got going, it was a lot easier to stomach all of those different voices. And it is really well produced. It's different than any other audiobook I've ever read or listened to, in that it uses some special effects and not really sound effects, because there's definitely those, but just special effects on the voices.
That's true.
Or a lot of times I think it's him just with some voice altering.
Yeah, that was interesting. It does
technology.
say it's like narrated by this guy. It's not narrated by like a cast of people. So
yeah, I think it's just him.
Maybe.
And they use the voice changing alterations digitally to like make it sound like different people.
Well, that might be even more impressive then.
Yeah, I can hear it a little bit in how he pronounces some things, right? Like when there's continuity in certain vowels, or the timbre of certain, or the tempo of certain words. I think they're all him. But yeah, I won't, on a binary, did I like or not like this book? I was entertained. I found myself laughing a lot.
Okay.
But it was really towards mid to end of the book that I really started to feel invested in the story. It took a little bit for me to get into.
And I think, it is one of these things. So it's a post-apocalyptic world. Like there's a apocalypse on the world. Aliens come down and smash the world, and then they're rebuilding it underground in this like video game type dungeon crawl thing is, the meat of it.
Basic
idea
behind the game, yeah.
It has to, because of that, it has to spend time setting up that world, setting up the rules. There's a lot of expository parts of, learning the universe that it is. It gets to it really quick. I mean, the world is destroyed and they're down there in the dungeon, like
in the
1.
first minute of the book. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say like it does a really good job of setting the stakes, understanding who the character is and the predicament that they're in very quickly. But yeah, it does have that slow start. You think about like starting a locomotive, because you have to explain what's going on here and really set up for the reader, whether you're already very familiar with this kind of like video game premise or not. You have to lay that out. But you're right.
Yeah,
I think halfway through the book, once it's like rolling and you're meeting new characters and going through the dungeon and stuff, it's a lot more fun as it goes.
Yeah, and I think something the book does pretty well is it throws you into this world so quickly, and it might even be too quickly. Like getting to know a little bit about him, maybe a little bit of that last night before the first collapse, where you find out a little bit more about his life instead of unfolding it as you get to know him, maybe would have helped. You have to, it's one of those things I know I've said on the podcast before, you have to accept so much so quickly that it's a little hard to stomach. And then I can tell, because I'll put myself in the middle of the like nerd spectrum here on like D&D and video games. Maybe I'm in the middle, in that I understood the references, what it was doing in like building experience and class and race with Dungeons and Dragons. I knew enough about it to stay invested, but I wonder, people who aren't D&D players or people who aren't video gamers, if they're reading the book and getting into it as well. It was really interesting to me to kind of think about that balance of how much are you going to make the reader accept right away without more explanation.
And that would be one of my main criticisms of the
Okay.
book. And we're talking about the book, so there's going to be spoilers in the
Yeah.
book. But
Yeah.
is
Oh,
this
yes, of course.
this is an ongoing series. There's already 6 novels and no signs of stopping. I don't think this book tells a story. There's no complete story in this book.
Mm.
Like you mentioned, race and class. That's something they're looking forward to. Oh, when you get to level 3, you get to choose your new race and class. And like, what does that mean? You know, kind of in that video game and that Dungeons and Dragons, you know, type oeuvre. They don't even get that far. Like this book is
In this book, yeah.
very much an introduction to this universe. And, you know, it's one of these things they've set up from the beginning. Oh, it's levels 1 through 20 and nobody's ever got past level 11 or level 9 or
13
something
or
like that.
whatever it is, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, cool. So this is like, you know, good for Dinniman. He can write these books forever and he's got a fan base that will probably keep buying them forever. But as far as like getting a story, it doesn't. Like there's no resolution to anything in this book. Like it doesn't, you know, sometimes when you watch a movie and you know, like, oh, it's part of a trilogy, they'll still tell a story and have some character development and stuff in that story. And I didn't feel that the book was successful in doing that. It was very much it was a whole book for chapter 1 of a longer adventure.
Yeah, and what I was thinking about when I was reading it is like, what if this had flopped, right? What if this was
Oh,
the
yeah.
standalone, another one wasn't made, it did not get popular, like it doesn't stand alone. It's expecting you to know going into it, which I didn't. I knew there were more books, but I went under the assumption that this first one was good and then there was more of the story to tell instead of, oh, this was planned from the get-go to be a series of books. And maybe it was.
A
Maybe
forever
Matt
series,
Dinniman
right?
like sold it as a trilogy and said like we're going to get through this dungeon in 3 and then slowed it down. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I started to realize I only had maybe an hour and a half of the book left when I finished it yesterday and going like, wow, we're still on level 2. So that's telling me that we're not gonna get a resolution to this. And
Yeah,
that
that happened
I'll
to
agree,
me.
that felt a little disappointing.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna leave on some cliffhanger and it's gonna like, am I gonna want to do the next book? I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know if
and
I
I
got
didn't
that
even feel
invested.
like it was a cliffhanger. Like nothing exciting, like, oh, I gotta know what happened next. It's like, okay, now we're going to the next level of the dungeon and you're gonna read another book about that level of the dungeon. And it's like, or I won't. Like, I'm
Yeah, well,
very take it
I
or
would
leave it.
say I would say the cliffhanger is on the overarching theme of the things he starts to realize and discover, right? We're getting little tips and hints throughout as he's learning the world about just this conglomerate and series of games that happens over centuries. And you know, the commercial aspect of it. And I think his realization, he's starting to figure out that this thing's rigged and he's going to have to do some deeper work to survive it, like beyond playing the game and giving them what they want so they'll keep him alive. It's pretty clear that he starts to figure out that the rigged aspect of it. And that
Yes,
to
it
me was the
is.
cliffhanger.
It's for sure successful in the fact that there's layers to it. There is the dungeon and the adventure that he's going on. There's also that like what's going on behind the scenes part of it, you know, the real story underneath. And there's also the interactions that they're having with the alien species and stuff as far as like the press appearances and the social media following and that kind of stuff. So there are definitely layers to this. And with a series that is just taking its time, who knows? There might be 18 books in this series by the time it's over. All of those things can be explored, and I would not say that it's too much. I think it's successful in having those different layers and giving you just enough to be curious about them.
So, as we're talking about these themes and the multiple layers, what does this book remind you of? I mean, there's definitely calls to lots of pop culture. I mean, it mentions Dungeons and Dragons in the book. At some
Mhm.
point, Carl's like, "The last time I played Dungeons and Dragons, I was in high school or whatever." Like he
But
talks
no, he
about it.
was in the military. That's another part
Military,
of
that's
like
what
the
it was.
character
Yes,
is
yes,
like
yes.
he was in the
Yeah.
military, and so he's kind of you know, he's got some training, and but it's also cool because we know like those military people like sitting around the base, they're totally playing Dungeons and Dragons, and reading comic books, and doing nerd stuff.
Yes. What other things does this book remind you of?
For sure, the first thing that came to my mind was Ready Player One, right? Because of those
Yeah.
references and that idea of like, oh, I'm going through this world, and my knowledge of these nerd things from the past not only are informing how the aliens are building the world, but also the way the main character can navigate it. So that was a very strong connection there.
That's a good call. I was thinking like the Truman Show. Do you remember the
Yes.
Truman Show? Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is another one of those layers that the author is exploring, is like they're being watched the entire time. Yeah. It's a show for the aliens who destroyed the planet.
And in The Truman Show, if you've never seen the film, nerds, it's Jim Carrey sometime in the 90s, I believe, late 90s.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Is a show that he is someone who grew up, he was adopted and grew up in a fake world that was created by a producer and some writers. And he, as an adult, starts to figure out, like, there's something funky about this world, and he starts to figure out that he's a television show. And that's a little bit how this one plays out too, right? The world collapses. Carl doesn't know what's going on. He survives because the cat named Donut runs outside, like jumps out the window or something, and he's got to go outside to rescue her from the cold, and the world collapses, and by virtue of going out to rescue the cat, he stays alive. So he doesn't realize until some point as well, it unfolds that they're being watched and it's a show, and they start to have followers and those media appearances. You know, he starts to navigate very smartly how to play the system a little bit. Like when they get thrown on that bad show, with the Prince dude that exploits people, and he's thinking about how to like maneuver it and play a game here to not have to be on the show or to exploit it.
Yeah, like the first appearance is very much like a television talk show, well-produced
like
kind of thing. And they go through that, and that's, the other character is in that realm. And then they go to this other show that's very much like just a YouTube just slop with, the demographic is the 13 to 16-year-old boy. And he's like, oh no, let me take over and deal with this. I've been here before. This level of scum and villainy is a little different.
Of course, I thought about the Hunger Games as well. Because as the Hunger Game goes along, they start learning about, they know about it, but I think Katniss really learns more about those layers and how politically difficult things are as they're trying to like tear down the regime.
Yeah. And
obviously also a game of survival.
Exactly. Yeah. I was going to say, like, there's other characters in the game, which creates tension in the relationships, because to survive, you probably do need to make allies, but also there's only one survivor. So there's a lot of PvP murder as well.
And also the idea about having to gain followers, right? So that they can send you in gifts to help you on your journey. So that was one of the things about this one, right? They need to gain followers so that they can get help and gifts, which we don't get to in this first book. To your credit of what you're saying, like the book doesn't actually get there. We just know they're building towards that. And I think they say it's not till level 4 that people can send them stuff. So I'm assuming that's the next book. I don't know.
That reminds me of this tangent. There's a video game, like a racing game. It's a NASCAR like game, like NASCAR 2000 something. I don't know what it is, but like you get your car and you build it, and you earn money for your races and you build it and stuff like any other kind of like racing game. But the thing that this one has is after every race, there's a mechanic in the game where you have to go to Twitter, and like people will tweet you, and like it has different options, like a choose your own adventure book on how you want to tweet them back. And you could be like a total jerk to everybody if you want and stuff. It's so dumb, but it's like, it's really fun.
That was my favorite NASCAR game, actually.
You played that one too?
That one.
That was awesome.
I did. I played that one more than any of the other ones because I always tried really, really hard to not be a villain. You're either a villain or a hero.
Yes.
But like I'm so bad at virtual racing that I inevitably have to crash other people to win. So then like even these sponsors you can choose are dependent on your character, whether you're like a villain or a hero, and like they'll boo you and that you'll get like mean tweets at you, and like you can respond nicely or you can respond as a jerk.
Yeah, all of that builds your rep. You get mean tweets from the other racers who are real life people. Like, you know what I mean? Because it's a licensed sports game. So the other drivers are like real life people, and they're fake in-game tweeting you terrible things. Like, yeah, you suck. You took me out. You're like, yeah,
you're such a jerk. I can't believe you did that. You should never be on the track. And then the like meanness gets worse when you like, if you're like on easy mode and you get the pole every single time, like you're cheating. You're the worst driver ever in NASCAR. To me, that was fun. It is ridiculous.
It's so
ridiculous,
dumb, but it is fun.
Oh my gosh. Then I just have like the mechanics of your races change as well. Like people will cut you off or try to
Yes.
like spin you out if you're like a villain, or they're like help you out and draft with you if you are a hero. Like it's really interesting how they built
100%.
that.
You'll just get spun on the straightaway and you're like, what the heck? And you're like, oh yeah, I was mean to that guy on Twitter. So
Oh,
dumb.
that's a good call.
Gosh.
What else? This book reminded me of The Truman Show, reminded me of Hunger Games. Ready Player One's a good call. They were just a lot of references as he goes to survive. There's a lot of pop culture references in this thing as well.
Sure. I mean, I would also say it's a Jumanji, right? It's the game,
Mm.
but in real life. So I
Yeah.
would say if we're thinking about most popular MMORPGs, which this is, it would be World of Warcraft, right? Like it is.
Okay.
Like, and I think that's definitely the demographic, like the target audience of this book is people who were playing World of Warcraft 20 years ago. Like I think you had the question on here of like, why is this the book that all nerds are trying to get everybody to read? It's because they were World of Warcraft nerds 20 years ago.
Okay.
And they're like,
okay.
It's Jumanji, but for World of Warcraft kind of thing.
How funny. I also, I want to shout out about this idea that the cat is royalty in this world. I thought that was the funniest thing. You know, he has this cat. It's his ex-girlfriend's cat. It mentions a few times he was planning on like kidnapping the cat and not giving back the cat to his ex. And yeah, she becomes Princess Donut, and he as a character is like her court, is her bodyguard.
Yeah, like bodyguard to Princess Donut or the Kingdom of Princess
I think
Donut
that's
or something.
Hilarious. And
sure,
I really appreciate how they initially built the stats of their characters, right? Princess Donut being so high in charisma and high in strength, but you know, low in her health points. So it's a tricky combination. And the cat having magic missile from the onset, just missiles coming out of, I imagine coming out of her eyeballs. I can't remember if it described where it came out of, but so it's so good. It's so good and twisted in that it like not twisted, but that twist in it that she's the royalty in this universe with high charisma, and he's kind of a grunt soldier, tank kind of character.
I think that's very relatable to a lot of nerds. Like this is definitely a nerd book aimed at nerds. And I think, you know, if we think about cats on the internet, like cats are a big nerd thing, you know? When I watch a lot of nerd videos of people like painting miniatures and 3D printing this and playing Dungeons and Dragons, there's always cats.
There are cats going by in the background. Yeah, you're not wrong. Cats are a very common familiar for nerds.
I think it really.
It's funny because you'll see
people
take pictures of their game tables. You're right. You're like, hey, I was playing this game and it came with this extra, you know, what are they called? Not noodles. Meeples. Look at this extra meeple, and it's a cat laying across the whole board.
There you go.
Cat people.
Nerds love cats.
So the game hinges on this group called the Born Corporation, who manages this crawl. We learn that there are multiple corporations that rotate running the crawl. We learn that the Born Corporation might be in a little bit of trouble, so they're like changing the rules to try to make money quicker. But how does this book use this corporation, this idea to be satirical, right? It's satire is what this book is.
Absolutely.
So what about this? Like, are we supposed to hate the corporations, the aliens, or are they just a satire of who we are as humans right now in a society that values production and entertainment at all costs?
I think there is that. I think that is a very classic, like, literary thing to do, right? In your post-apocalyptic world, it's oftentimes the apocalypse came along because of greedy capitalism or, you know, the corporations taking our humanity away from us. The idea of, especially of the modern idea of everything is entertainment and your eyeballs, your attention is the commodity, right? You always hear about like social media and like, well, who's the product? The person is the product, and we're selling your attention to advertisers and those kinds of things. So there's definitely a heavy dose of that, you know, classic trope in it. But I definitely think that this book is for those old WoW players. This book is for, you know, I think the Borant Corporation is Blizzard, right, who made World of Warcraft. I think that is the idea of like the critiques that those players would have of Blizzard is like, well, they kept nerfing things, you know, and they would make changes mid game. And of course they would, right? They're running this thing with thousands and thousands of players in it live in real time. There's going to be changes and updates that affect most people badly and some people, you know, positively and those kinds of things. But it just really rings through of like, oh, I went to my inventory screen and there was a big banner letting me know that there's a problem with the bathrooms or something like that, right? And that would be the idea is you would go and you would log in and there would be some, hey, update change, you know, this sword no longer does this much damage anymore. Now it does less damage and those kinds of things. Like, oh, they nerfed my character and oh, they made all these changes. And just as I was, you know, trying to get ahead, I got, you know, they yanked the rug out from under me and those kinds of things. Like that was a lot of conversation around the time when World of Warcraft was so popular and they were doing that. So I see it as like very much a send up of Blizzard and World of Warcraft in those moments.
Do you think the same of like Warhammer and Games Workshop?
Oh my gosh.
They do that a lot?
Yes. I mean, that is it's different in the sense that it's not the video game side of it. And they're, you know, like a publishing and manufacturing of real goods type thing.
Right.
But constantly. Oh my gosh. Especially if you're playing in the tournament scene, like the FAQs, the errata, the updates, the nerfing, literally every week they publish a rules change for one or multiple of the games that they produce. And that's part of that idea of like, hey, I think this is this niche little nerdy hobby that I do, but behind the scenes, it's this big corporate
business
overlord that is trying to make money, keep things going, appease shareholders, that kind of thing. I mentioned in I think the last episode, Nerdiest Thing, I watched the Dungeons and Dragons like shareholder meeting thing.
Yeah.
And made me feel terrible. I'm like, ugh, I don't like this at all. I don't like being reminded that my fun little imagination hobby that I play with my friends is a corporate, publicly traded Hasbro thing, right? It's icky.
And that's, if you haven't read the book, nerds, they do this daily. You mentioned like Warhammer, maybe weekly, World of Warcraft, whenever they needed to, I imagine. In this book, it's a daily thing where they have a kind of recap show of things happening across the entire dungeon and characters that, you know, you only see on television or hear about on these recap shows. And then there's a kind of a voice that goes through the whole dungeon that kind of recaps some things. And it's like correcting things like, we've decided that these characters no longer have the strength that we're cutting that strength in half due to errors we've seen, or the error in the bathroom that murdered people. We've corrected that error. So sorry about that if you died. Like it's heartless. And interesting the way they keep changing the game. And it's interesting to hear Carl's thoughts about some of those things. Like they killed, what was it? Level 93 something that came after them because one of the elderly people had peed in the hallway.
Yes.
And he exploited that monster by luring it into a staircase, because if they go into the staircase, they learn that they get taken away. You know, no way a level 10 is going to beat a level 93. And so they did that. And you can hear him thinking like, well, they'll probably announce in the next update that we're not going to be able to do that. So glad we used it this time. Like it's interesting to hear him as a character think through those things, and like maybe they won't figure out this loophole.
Mm-hmm. Right. And again, that just speaks to kind of like it's an adventure, and there's also this meta, but they're exploring the meta in it. I mean, it is successful.
Let's talk about Easter eggs or hidden rules in this dungeon crawl. Do you think the author is rewarding like gamers or World of Warcraft people, or is the book accessible enough for someone who's not into those things?
I think the author is rewarding people who are foot perverts and cat people, because boy, there sure are a lot of.
Okay. Or how about he goes through this whole first book without any pants?
No pants and no shoes. And there's definitely like, this is another one of the critiques I have for the book, is like they're talking about all this foot fetish stuff in a very like tongue-in-cheek way, but also every chapter definitely has like a gross description of what he's crushing with his feet and squirting between his toes. Like it really,
you're like, not wrong. It's pretty gross.
Yeah, it's not, which is fine, I guess. Not for me.
And they hang a lampshade on it at somewhere in like the second level. He gets like a pedicure kit that like makes his feet powerful unless he puts shoes on. And he finally is given his shoes as a gag gift, but now he's not going to wear shoes because he's got all these boons to his like attacks and health by being barefoot. Same thing about being pantsless. Instead of giving him pants, they give him a different set of boxers that gives him a very powerful tool. Like he's never going to wear pants if he can put a shield of protection up every 30 hours. It's pretty weird. I actually forgot about the pants thing early on until it was brought up again in the next chapter. I was like, oh yeah, he doesn't have any pants. This is weird.
Yeah, the foot stuff is definitely foot stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it's a decent balance. You don't have to be World of Warcraft or super nerdy to figure out. I think the way they talk about like how they level up, and as he's reading through his inventory, I think it's done to a point that you don't have to be a super nerd gamer to understand it or get into it. So I thought that was a good balance. I think there's a few things that helped me with my Dungeons and Dragons knowledge, like a charisma level.
Sure,
I knew what that meant. I think if you don't play these games, like you can guess what a charisma level is, but then you eventually figure it out when they're on that first show and Donut like wows the crowd. You can figure out what the charisma level is at that point. So things like that I thought were done pretty well.
I think it's being recommended to people that are like that are Dungeons and Dragons people or video game people that play that kind of video games, right? Like if your video game experience is like Candy Crush and Bust a Move, maybe not. But if you've been playing, other like video games, especially those MMORPGs, or like I went through a phase, it was probably around like the pandemic times where I was really getting into the those like Korean turn-based RPG mobile games. Like I was like, oh, there was a Marvel one and there was a this kind of one and there was the Wizard of Oz one I think I mentioned a few months ago that I was playing and stuff. And I was like all into it, but then I got really burnt out on them. And for a lot of the things that are highlighted in the book of like grinding and like farming XP, right? They talk about like, oh, we got to go up the hallway and kill a bunch of cockroaches so that we can level up, and clicking through just like endless inventory screens and trying to remember, and like the idea of like, oh, I got to push over here and I got to equip this before I do this and like all this stuff. And I got super burnt out on it. So now I'm reading this book and they're talking about like, oh, my inventory screen did this and I got a new tab at the top. I'm like, I hate it. But I know people do love it. People love those games, right? It's a huge popular genre, but I'm so over that. Like, oh, great. Now I got to read a book about inventory screens.
Well, I kept thinking better him than me. He's keeping track of it. I don't have to.
There you go. Yeah. And that was the other thing is like those games become a job, right? Because it's like, oh, well, you have to check in daily to get the daily loot box and the this and that. And I'm like, boy, this is everything I can't stand about mobile games these days.
That was like the game when you and Andrew came to visit. I was telling him about a game that I'd purchased that was kind of based off of H.P. Lovecraft and that I was stuck. I couldn't figure out how to get past this part. So Andrew starts playing and he's a way bigger gamer than you or I. He figures out that you have to like collect these things and you have to make bullets. You have to have gunpowder and this and that and the metal. And he had to like, oh, and there was not meth, but what was it? You could take a drug like meth.
It was
you could drink it.
Morphine.
Morphine, that's right. You could use morphine to like heal yourself, but then your screen would get a little blurry like you were, under the influence. Yeah, he figured out all these things. And I realized as he was playing, like, I'm never going to play this game because I'm not going to go find all those things to collect to make gunpowder and
the crafting
in order
part
to try
of it,
to that was a little much, I think, and
they definitely mentioned that in Dungeon Crawler Carl that like, oh, once you reach this level you can start crafting, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, he talks a few times in this first book about having to have a craft table in order to make these things, and so he's not going to get that till level 4. Yeah, it's a little intricate. It's interesting, but still accessible, I think, to anybody, even if they're not a super gamer nerd. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you'd like it if you were not a super gamer nerd. I don't know. I feel like I know who this book is for, and I know who I would recommend it to and who I would not recommend it to.
Right. That's a good point. Do you have any favorite parts of the book?
I think that you're right. I think the interaction between, the cigarette smoking ex-military, doofus and the princess cat is probably the best part of the book, right? It's always surprising, but not surprising. The interactions that they have, I think it's where the humor and like the cuteness of the story lies. So I would say that is definitely my favorite part of the book. I think it's kind of predictable. Like if you tell me that in these next 6 novels that are already out, that cat doesn't turn into a human and they have a romance, I'll be shocked. It seems very predictable.
I don't see that happening.
Oh, I do.
Let's see. You want some spoilers? Let's do some spoilers.
All right.
Let's see. The series.
Does Princess Donut ever turn into a human?
So first we're going to say right now there are 7 books.
Uh-huh.
Here's the titles of the books. Dungeon Crawler Carl. Carl's Doomsday Scenario. The Dungeon Anarchist's Cookbook. The Gate of the Feral Gods. The Butcher's Masquerade. The Eye of the Bedlam Bride. This Inevitable Ruin. And the next book in the series that will come out soon, A Parade of Horribles. Interesting. Does that, okay, so thinking about that, do any of those titles pique your interest?
No, I'm not going to continue with this book. I did not like it. And the more we talk about it, I'm like, yeah, I really don't like it. And I'm not saying it's bad, and I'm not saying people shouldn't like it. I'm like, it's not for me. I won't.
I get it. I get it. Okay, so now let's just ask. Let's get some spoilers for ourselves, because I'm on the fence. I have other things I'd like to read first, but I could see myself at some point getting the audiobook and catching up, but it's not like I'm gonna do it right now. I'm so into it. In Dungeon Crawler Carl, does Princess Donut ever become a human? Let's see what the internets tell us. As of the current books through book 7, Princess Donut does not ever become a human. She remains a tortoiseshell Persian cat, though she is physically and mentally altered from her original state. She's enhanced. She doesn't change her race because of cat pride.
We'll see.
So in the first 7 books, at least, she does not become human.
All right. We'll see.
Okay, so so my favorite parts of the book, I think the battle scenes are done really well. I don't know if I would have felt the same if I was physically reading it, but as an audiobook format, I thought it was cool. Like, I felt like I was listening to a decent, like, maybe podcast D&D gameplay where they're describing what's going on. I thought the battle scenes were all written really well. So I look forward to those as they emerge, and as Carl is figuring out how to use the tools around him and what he knows how to do, like leaving traps for people with this unstable goblin dynamite and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I thought was all really well done. But let's get to the question, our Dr. Intern Joan question about Dungeon Crawler Carl, about DCC. Buy it, borrow it, skip it. Where are you at, Rob?
So I know that this is going to appeal to people. So I would say it's a borrow, just to make sure that you're into all the things in this book. Here's where I'm at as far as like, I think people, like I said, people who used to play World of Warcraft are going to recommend this book to you if you're into nerdy things. Here's what you got to know. It's very sweary. Like, it's not like a fun family time for kids. There's a lot of bad words in it. It's pretty violent, but not anything more than like video game violence. There is weird foot stuff in it. Like, if that is something that is not for you, buckle up, kids. There's foot stuff in it. And the other thing that like I kept noticing too that bothered me was like when they do the first boss battle, and it's like this person that was, this is some kind of like mutated human from our world. And it was like this very like disgusting, sloppy hoarder person. And they made that person Spanish speaking, right? And from South America. Yeah. There was another character that came into the book that was like it's like a shopping cart lady who's kind of this wild card. And like, she also has a Spanish name and stuff. So there was this kind of tinge of maybe not out and out racism, but like this stereotyping there. And I think, that could just be me being a little like overly sensitive to stuff like that these days. But that was something that stuck out to me too. And I'm like, okay, so over the course of these novels, are there going to be a lot of these like racial stereotype kind of things in there as well? Is that something that people need to know about if that's going to bother them too? So yeah, for those reasons, and just the idea of like, oh my gosh, an MMORPG, but it's a book, I won't be continuing it. So I would say it's a borrow. Get through it, see if, you're like me and you're like, what? Oh, I don't get it. Why are all these things so popular? It's like, well, if you're a WoW fan and a cat fan and a foot fetish person, like, oh man, and a foot pervert, I like to say, this book is for you.
Wow. I'm glad you brought up the swearing, because that's something I had in my mind to talk about too. Like, this is not a safe for kids book at all. There are definitely adult themes throughout it. There's a description of an old man's junk in the book that's pretty thorough. I mean, it relates to what's going on in the scene, but there's some weird sexual connotations in some of the rewards that they get that were a little bit cringy. But yes, lots of swearing, lots of adult themes. But I would also say borrow it if you are a little bit of a nerd, and then, like Rob said, determine if it's something you want to keep going on. And I'm going to be specific. I think you should borrow the audiobook, because I don't know that I would have enjoyed it as much physically reading it, because this audiobook did such a good job of, it's almost like we're living in that world, because this specific sound of this voice is the person making the announcements. This voice is when he gets rewards and he gets, bonuses that he's unlocking. That voice, it's almost like you were playing a video game and you get to those spots in the game. It became familiar. And how it described the music being played in the background while they get into a battle or they get into something, he starts to go, I recognize this music, the boss is coming, right? And that reminded me of like playing D&D with you, where you have your battle music. And sometimes you've used that as like okay, you open the door and boom, you click the thing and the battle music comes on and we're like, oh no.
Here we go.
It does that really well in the audiobook. I don't know if it would have been as successful if I was reading it on the page. So I say borrow it if you're a little bit of a nerd in any way, shape, or form about video games or gaming in general, D&D, but borrow the audiobook. It's really well produced and really well done.
Could not agree more about that production. And in fact, I remember listening to the credits at the end of the book, and it is something where like they advertised the company that did the audio recording, and then it's not an Audible produced recording. It's something that they did and then sold to Audible.
And they kind of hang a lampshade on that, right? Because if it wasn't done by this professional people, it would sound like this. And it had a whole bunch of noises in the background while they were doing the credits. I thought that was really well done too. But yeah, Dungeon Crawler Carl, nerd out about it or don't. But both of us recommend borrow it.
Yeah. Okay. Well done.
Well done, Rob. I agree. What's the nerdiest thing you did this week?
Okay, so I have a live reveal, and then I'll talk about the nerdiest thing I did this week. So I've been talking a lot about my 3D printer, and the 3D printer is super cool because it's multicolor. Like it'll print for a while and then it'll switch colors and stuff. And every time it switches colors, it has to like clean out the nozzle of the old color and then start the new color. So you actually have to put a little box next to your 3D printer, my little stuff, and they literally call it poop. But every time it has to switch.
Is that a 3D printed box?
Of course it is.
Okay, perfect. All right, good. Okay.
But like you can see, like it just extrudes like a little bit of the stuff to kind of clean it out, right? So this box will fill up of that stuff. And so I had this idea. I was like, oh, you know what would be cool? Or maybe I stole this idea from somewhere else, but I can't remember where. Anyway, I got silicone molds. And so I got a silicone mold of a skull. And I've been taking the little like poop things and like putting it in here and melting it with a heat gun. So it took forever. Like this isn't a very big skull, but there's like 2 buckets loads of this stuff in there. And so I've been putting it in there and like heating it up with the 3D printer. So now if I can, I'm going to pull it out of the mold.
You're taking it out of the mold now. Okay. Trying to.
It's very sticky. Maybe I should
have
done it beforehand.
You're going to have a plastic poop mold of
It's like a multicolor. There we go. It's a multicolor made of poop plastic skull.
Oh my gosh. That actually looks pretty cool.
And it's pretty cool. Yeah. So now I have a little paperweight skull.
To those of you doing the audio version of this podcast, it really is just every color you could possibly imagine of these little like pooped out pieces of plastic that were put into a mold and then melted all together. And so there's just, you can see the skull clearly, but there's just colors everywhere. It's just colors. That's pretty cool.
So I took that waste and made something else out of it.
It's a paperweight. Is it heavy enough to be a paperweight?
It is definitely solid. This thing is heavy. It's about the weight of a baseball, about the size and weight of a baseball. It's it could definitely break a window. Cool. I didn't know how that was going to turn out, and it turned out pretty cool.
It is pretty sweet. It is pretty sweet. Yeah. But it took you said like two buckets full of that stuff.
I think that's 2 or 3 buckets full to fill a skull this size. But I also have smaller ones, so I think I'm going to do. It came in like a set of 3, and this was the big one. So I'll probably do some smaller ones next. But
That's crazy. How long did it take to melt all that?
It took a couple weeks because it filled up the first time, and I was like, "Oh, cool! I'm gonna put all this in there." And then with the heat guns, like forever, and it was only like a third or a quarter full because once it melted
it melts
down, it was
down.
much smaller.
Yeah,
I was like, "Oh, this is gonna take a while." So this is a few months worth of collecting.
Wow,
to get that done, but cool, man.
That's pretty
I made a skull
darn
out of
nerdy.
printer poop.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, the nerdiest thing I did this week is, the time has changed. It is April Fool's Day, and it is now sunny enough for me to varnish and put away painted minis and prime minis. So
actually, I'm
going
to
to
go varnish minis right after we're done because it is a beautiful, warm, sunny day.
Yes. So I am finally going to prime the minis for Shriek, which is the Scream themed Final Girl, so I can paint it and then varnish it and then play it. So nerdiest thing I did this week was get all of that ready, open up all the little chits and things in the box and get it ready for priming, which maybe I'll do after we record because it is sunny and warm and not rainy.
I've been a lone soldier, a lone pilgrim painting minis these last few months because we got that airbrush back at Christmas, and I was so excited about the airbrush that I primed like everything. So all during like January and February where the weather was wet and it was rainy or whatever, no problemo for Boberto. I had tons of stuff ready to go. I've been painting like crazy. But
so now you got to varnish it all now that it's sunny.
Yep, exactly. So now it's time for my friends to catch up now that the weather's good again.
Very good. Very good.
Awesome. Level up, nerds. Level up, nerds. We've officially survived 100 floors of the podcasting dungeon. That's right. It is our 100th episode celebration. To celebrate hitting triple digits, we're throwing a massive party next week, and you're all invited to nerd out with us. We're looking back at our favorite moments, the biggest nerd outs, and maybe even a few critical failures along the way. Don't miss the milestone. Join your nerd best friends next week for the big 100. What an anniversary.
I can't believe it's happening. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. Good for us. Before you go, join us. Hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you felt the nerd love, drop us a 5-star rating and help more nerds find their people. Find us on social at NerdBestFriends or email podcast@nerdbestfriends.com. Grow the nerd herd, spread the geeky joy, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for going on this dungeon crawl with me, Rob.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Nerds, if you haven't, go do it. If you have, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week for episode 100.
Bye-bye.
Skull.